This video is going to show how to test a rebar with the Hilti 180 anchor tester. As we usually do not test rebar with a load spreading bridge, we have to put the cylinder directly onto the substrate. In order to be able to do so, we need to mount the steel plate onto the bottom of the hydraulic cylinder. We can do this by using the two small screws and the small Allen key which are included in the toolkit. Always note that when testing rebar, we need a certain protruding length of the rebar itself. When using the Hilti 180, this has to be at least 26 centimeters. When using the Hilti 370, this has to be at least 31 centimeters. The steel plate can basically always be mounted onto the bottom of the hydraulic cylinder. The only reason to remove it is when you want to mount the cylinder onto the load spreading bridge. There are two bigger internal threads on the bottom of the hydraulic cylinder, which can be used together with the two bigger screws and the bigger Allen key to mount the cylinder onto the load spreading bridge. Now we pulled the cylinder over the rebar and put it directly onto the substrate, and then we need the hydraulic pump and the hydraulic hose. We connect the hydraulic pump with the hydraulic cylinder, remove the red caps, pull the ring on the female side of the adapter backwards and push it firmly into the male part of the adapter on the cylinder side. We do the same on the pump side. Remove the caps, pull the ring on the female side of the hose a little bit backwards and push it firmly into the male part of the connector on the hydraulic pump side. Next, we connect the digital gauge. Always hold the digital gauge firmly. Remove the red plastic caps. Pull the ring on the female side a little bit back and push the gauge firmly into the connector. Before applying the rebar adapters, it is important to move the cylinder a little bit out of its housing. In order to be able to do so, we have to turn the wheel clockwise, the wheel on the pump clockwise in close direction. This means we close the hydraulic circle, which means that we enable the oil to flow from the hydraulic pump to the hydraulic cylinder. The reason why we pull out the hydraulic cylinder a little bit out of its housing we will see in the end, but this will help us a lot when we have to dismantle the rebar wedge from the rebar barrel. Now we are ready to pull the rebar barrel over the rebar and put it on the top of the hydraulic cylinder, and we push the rebar wedge firmly into the rebar barrel. Now we can switch on the gauge with the P button on the front side of the gauge, and we switch on the Bluetooth connection, the Bluetooth signal, with the black button on the back side of the digital gauge. In this video we are not going to show how the mobile app works, but basically you are now ready to connect the equipment, the digital gauge, with the mobile app and use it as described in a separate instruction for use. Now we are ready to apply the load. We do that by moving the handle of the hydraulic pump up and down. We apply the load slowly, steadily and continuously up to either predefined test load or up to failure. In this example we reach failure and we can release the pressure from the rebar. We do that by turning the wheel on the hydraulic pump counterclockwise in the open direction. Means we open the hydraulic circle, which means that the oil can flow back from the cylinder to the pump. And now we see the reason why we pulled the cylinder a little bit back out of its housing. With a hammer we can now remove the barrel from the wedge, and we can pull the rebar wedge over the rebar. First the rebar wedge and then the rebar barrel. Now we are ready to disconnect all the hydraulic connections. Always put the plastic cap back onto the connectors on the female and on the male side in order to avoid dust or any other dirt to enter into the hydraulic system. We can switch off the gauge with the P button on the front side, the Bluetooth signal with the black button on the back side. Always hold the gauge firmly when removing it from the hydraulic pump. Close all caps and you're basically ready to put either the equipment back into its case or move it forward to the next testing site.